What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and we're back with another episode of 5 Influential Horror. And this time, I am joined by Ivan Lopez, who is a horror author and a fellow content creator that I was actually very excited to talk to about his influential horror. So thanks for making time for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have read a chapter from Ivan's book. I will put a link to that video in the cloud somewhere. So yeah, do you just want to tell people a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh yeah, sure. So I'm, as you said, I am an author and a content creator. I write horror, appropriate. Currently, I do have a novella out, and I am working on a collection of short stories that'll be the next book. One of those short stories has been featured on the No Sleep podcast, which is a award-winning podcast, and it's pretty cool. I mean, check it out, not just for my story, but for all the other ones too. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And I am also the creator and host of Gallivant of the Grotesque, which is a series that focuses on macabre and bizarre history, folklore, and legends.
Yeah. I definitely recommend going and checking out the lore stuff. It's really, really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. As always, I will put all of Ivan's stuff in the description for this episode, so you can go follow him and check out his content and his book. So influential horror is like one of my favorite conversations, because even when people pick the same movies, they never say the same thing. So I'm always like fascinated by what people say when they pick these movies. So so your first one is Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Yeah. So I was introduced to this when I was a child.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was one of my first introductions into the horror genre.
Nice.
And also my first introduction to a horror icon.
Yeah.
So as a child, I didn't really understand all the meta stuff.
Sure.
As an adult, I love it because of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was it was the first movie to. Can I curse? Is that like a thing, or like?
Yeah, you're good.
Or should I keep away from certain words?
You're good.
Okay. I probably should have asked that before we recorded.
That's okay. You're good.
But Wes Craven's New Nightmare was the first movie to scare the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that was the Freddy that became my Freddy. Okay. Even more so than in the first movie or in any others that followed. Because it was so he was so, I won't say real, but as a kid, absolutely, especially because that movie kind of introduced him into the quote unquote real world.
The real world, yeah.
That was it made me think that this character was for real, and of course makes me not want to go to sleep. So Freddy became one of my favorite horror icons from there on out, and he remains one of my favorites to this day. I love that movie. It's a great I just think that it's a great installment of the franchise, because it's the last movie in the franchise, and yet it is one of the best movies in the franchise, which doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
So it's a very impressive feat for that movie to have achieved. I really appreciate and admire that.
Yeah. So you said you were a kid. Do you remember how old?
Not really.
Little though, like under 10, you think?
Maybe around 10. I should say.
Just trying to think of like
experience
that as like a kid,
Oh my God! If I would have experienced that before then, oh my God, I probably would be even worse off than I am now.
Worse off. Yeah, because so my first, like, my gateway horror, my first movie was actually Poltergeist, but I saw it.
Oh,
It's like one of my first memories of life. Like I saw it when I was under the age of 5. I say like 4 since I remember it, probably 4 or 5 years old. But it so I was just curious like how young we're talking for that movie. That's yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't really remember, but that I do remember that being my first
Yeah.
exposure to the horror genre, at least from a film standpoint.
Yeah.
I do remember
So
from a literary standpoint, it was something else, but yeah.
yeah. So with this being like on your influential list, like I have to ask, what did you think of the 2010 remake?
Do we want to talk about that?
That kind of answers the question. I was just curious.
By the way, I also write movie reviews, so I'm not gonna touch that one.
Okay, that's fair. That is fair. Yeah. I had to ask just to see like gauge your reaction. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, so your second one is Alien,
Yes.
which I don't think we're going to be able to talk about without you showing your arm.
Oh yeah. So Alien is my favorite movie.
Yeah.
Not just favorite horror movie, but favorite movie.
Oh,
I
okay.
actually have to stand up a little to show the.
Yeah, it's a lot, I know, but look how cool this is.
See, where am I here? There we go.
Yeah.
So that's the stages from egg to adult of the xenomorph.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just in case anybody's questioning Ivan's commitment to his list.
yeah, yeah. More tattoos to come. Probably not.
Yeah.
From other influences of mine.
Ooh, okay.
Uh, yeah, but yeah, Alien is my favorite movie. I think it's as close to a perfect movie that, I mean, at least in my opinion,
Yeah.
that has been made. It's a great slow burn from
Yes.
and because like in the beginning, there's like not much that really happens.
No, not
You
at
know,
all.
there's a lot of character development, but
Mhm.
nothing horrific it really happens at all. So
Yeah, no, it's really
it's
slow.
one of those things that I think it did it brilliantly.
Mhm.
It wasn't one of those movies that has something like that, but it doesn't add to anything. So then you're just kind of
Yeah.
bored for 45 minutes until something happens.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
I
no,
don't think there's
this
anything boring
build is
about this.
worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the build is worth it. I think Ellen Ripley establishes her as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, final girls because
Yes.
of her strength. It's not she's never really a victim, at least not in the sense that we get from a lot of
Yeah.
other characters. You know,
Yes. Yes.
she was a leader from beginning to end. She didn't grow into that
Right.
role. She didn't take that role out of necessity. You
Yeah.
know, she did it because she was good at it. She didn't do it
Yeah.
because it was either that or death. You know,
Mhm.
she was a strong character the entire way through, and I love that.
Yeah.
Uh, I love the metaphors in it, from the sexual metaphors to to the environmental metaphor. Everything about it is it speaks without saying much, and I think that is
Yeah.
such an incredible aspect to the movie. Um, and then on top of that, it's still able to scare the hell out of you, and without showing you much either. You know, that is
Yeah.
another great thing that the movie does is the fear of the unknown. It doesn't show you much of the alien,
Right.
for most of the movie.
Mhm.
So your mind kind of fills in the blanks and really gets you, and that kind of thing allows each audience member to have a different experience, and that
Yeah.
experience is theirs. It's solely theirs,
Yep.
because not everybody's going to be, but everyone's not in each other's heads. So whatever scaring
Right.
this person is not going to scare the next person. I love it. It's great. I can go on for a lot longer on this, but
Yeah.
I know I can talk about this movie for forever.
Yeah. Yeah, Ripley always makes like my top 5 like, final girl crushes because there's a lot of things about her that that did and still do separate her from the others that have come before and after. And like one of my like favorite things about her, and they've done a little bit better with this with some of this like newer generation of final girls, but I love the like androgynous nature that is Ripley, like how she's this super strong character, but she's not like, there's never this moment of like over sexualization of her as like as physical, like just there for, the shower scenes or the, like there's never these like moments where like in other movies that you see with final girls where that's kind of some of the stuff that happens. And I love how androgynous her character is. Like for some reason, that's always made me feel like that was what made her even stronger. I really loved that. And I think it's funny. So I like the Alien franchise. I've seen, I think, all of them. I think there may be one I might have skipped because they got a little loopy the last couple, but I remember going to see Prometheus in theaters and I really enjoyed it as an experience, but then I really didn't remember a lot because it had been a long time since I had seen the original Alien. I didn't remember a lot of the tie-ins and stuff. I just like, I felt like I needed to go back. And I remember going home after watching that in the theaters and going and watching Alien. And I'd forgotten because I just remembered it being scary. I didn't remember just how long it takes for something scary to like actually happen. But I was surprised to find that it still held up like really well. Like it's stood the test of time or whatever, but it's like, it's really held up as in all of it, not just the messages, the points behind it, the characters, the scary parts, like the storyline, everything still to me, even now in 2022, holds up phenomenally well.
Absolutely. I think it's because it focused so much on its subtlety.
Yeah.
That it was able to hold up.
Yeah.
It never beat you over the head with anything. It wasn't too to the point with its messages.
Yes.
So it's able to grow and it's able to keep itself not just Ripley, but itself androgynous.
Yes.
To our times, So it's able to apply itself to our growing climate, culturally, politically, however you want to see it.
Yeah.
It kept itself open to change with that.
Yeah.
Which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the other thing of this is kind of an obvious one, but when you go practical effects, they always age better than like, of course, I mean, we're talking like before super big, CGI stuff, but I just mean like in general, whenever you're looking at older movies, they do tend to hold up better on that side of things because it's all practical, because you had to think outside the box to make things work. And I remember going back and watching it and noticing that like the lights on the outside of the ship are like Christmas lights. Like I remember cracking up about that, but it didn't matter because when you see it, especially as a first watcher, when you're really engulfed in the storyline, you don't notice stuff like that. You just know that you don't feel comfortable for whatever reason, and it's just, it's even the effects and stuff have just held up so well because they put so much love into making them authentic, and it shows even by like today's standards. So
absolutely, the design of that movie is just incredible.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. So your number 3, I don't think this one has been on anybody's list.
Really?
Which actually kind of really excites me because I love this movie. So your next one is build up the moment. Is The Exorcist. Yes.
It's on my list of influential movies, not for the reason of loving it.
Well, hold on now. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Okay.
And I'm not saying that it's a bad movie. I'm not.
Okay.
What I'm saying is this movie scared me so badly that to this day I refuse to watch it again.
You've only seen it once?
I've seen it once. And it scared me so much that I said, I cannot watch this movie again.
Wow.
Yes.
How old were you? Do you remember?
I was a teenager when I watched it for the first time.
I was a teenager the first time I saw it too.
And that's the reason it's on my list, even though I haven't seen it again since. And I'm gonna watch it again soon. I swear I'm gonna watch it again soon. And I promised that to another person who interviewed me about few months ago, and I still haven't gotten around to it. So, if he's going to be watching this, I am really sorry. I promise I'm getting to it.
That's funny.
This movie scared the living hell out of me.
Yeah.
But that's what horror's supposed to do. And I think it's very influential to me, not just because it scared me on a surface level, but I'm not a religious person.
Neither.
However, a movie that revolved around religion was able to scare the shit out of me, and I think
Yeah.
that is quite a feat. I think that is quite an achievement. But there's so many other things about the movie that make it terrifying. Taps into a fear of losing control of your surroundings, things that you normally have control over yourself. And having yourself be in the hands of somebody else and not being able to do anything about it is a terrifying notion. And that is all the religious stuff aside.
Yeah.
It's you can put that in any situation, whether it be in a professional climate where you may be in a job you don't like. You can put that in a relationship climate if you're in abusive relationships. This movie can be seen from so many of those perspectives. And
that's
that,
true. I haven't thought about that.
Makes it so like just viscerally scary. And yeah, I'm just like, no. I don't want to. But it inspires me because it's one of those things where as a creator of horror, you want people I want people to read my work. But at the same time, if somebody said your work scared me so much, I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again, that's just as big a compliment.
It's a compliment.
As somebody wanting to read it over and over again. And this is one of the few genres that can really see it that way.
For sure. Yeah.
And I think that's what sets horror apart from a lot of other genres is that it can almost be 100%, not quite 100%, but 90 something percent. It has a high percentage of adherence to the phrase "there's no bad publicity," and to have people be affected so much by it, whether it's negatively, whether it's positively, is exactly what horror is supposed to do.
Yeah.
And this movie does it, for me at least.
Yeah. So The Exorcist is one of only 2 movies that has ever scared me to the point of not being able to sleep. That's only happened twice. 2 movies have done that. And this one, I've seen this one multiple times. I've seen the other ones as well. I think that, and so possession films is probably my second favorite. No, it's my third favorite. It's up there though, as far as a favorite subgenre of horror, because to your point, that whole loss of control is really something unsettling. There's just something about that, that really gets under your skin. And you can see that in other things too. Sometimes it's in alien films, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or you see it in these other examples, but there is something about something taking over and having this negative intent that's and pushing that intent on your loved ones, your animals in some possession movies, all these things that is just so horrifying, because at the end of the day, it's you doing it, just not on your own. And that is really terrifying. I think too, so at the time that I saw this, I wouldn't say religious, but I definitely had a belief system. And so at the time that I saw this, I remember thinking this is right before my questioning days. I was a lot of these stories that you hear about possession a lot of the times it happens to people of faith or people surrounded by people of faith, or in this like this moment of like, there's a lot of this theme of questioning faith and all of these things. And when those types of things are in horror movies, it's like an instant like check for me. Like I love stuff like that. And so yeah, I really love The Exorcist. It's a really terrifying movie. Like even now, like there's certain scenes that when I think about them, I'm like, like so unsettling, like so unsettling.
And of course I'm being told I should give it another watch, especially with new cuts, that have been released with more scenes and such. And
yeah,
so I'm like, well, now I'm watching this again and exposing myself to new scenes, and it's like, man, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
well, and that there's Blumhouse is doing a remake.
Yeah.
Or I guess it's not a remake. I guess it's not a remake, but I feel like when there's this big of a gap, it's a remake. But I guess it's not technically a remake. I think it's
is it the same story as the first?
Like a continuation. Yeah, because the mom is going to be in it. I forgot her name.
Okay.
The woman that plays the mother.
Yeah. So it's
she's in it, but Linda Blair has had no mention of being in it. So okay. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I think sometimes I do wonder if like people go the continuation route because it's too risky to do a remake.
It is very risky to do remakes. I mean, there is such a loyal fan base to original movies, and it's a tricky thing to do and make everybody happy. I understand people want to tell their versions of the stories, but there's a satisfaction level that you have to keep in mind when doing those types of things, and you can't stray too far from the original story if you're doing a real remake, or even a real reboot. I mean, you can change things in reboots, but how much do you really want to deviate from what people know and love? I mean, the familiarity with characters and stories is what a lot of people are looking for, and if you throw much of that out the window, you're gonna lose people. So if you want to talk about that Nightmare on Elm Street remake, I think we are right now, but we're gonna maybe not.
Yeah, so I think I'm generally pretty open to remakes. The only remake in my history of horror love that I was never open to was Black Christmas, which I recently had to watch because I'm about to do an episode on it. That was a smart move to avoid that as long as I did. But anyway, I try to go into them, open-minded. I try to think, because I do sometimes really like reimaginings of things, or I really do like when people think outside the box, or they add or they change things. But to your point, it really does have to be this almost like perfect balance of old and new, or it just doesn't work. If it's too much of the old, it's like, okay, so what was the point of doing a new one? If it's too new, why didn't you just make it a continuation or a different film? Like, so it has to be this like perfect balance. And that is not easy to get when you're talking about remakes in the horror world. Like, it's not.
No, absolutely right. Absolutely right. But I think we're better off. I think we're in a really good, I think we're in a really good era right now because we had that remake reboot era that wasn't so great, and I think we're seeing more original works now, and I think that's fantastic. And if we do see something that is of an older franchise, they're at least making it a sequel instead of, and that way they can kind of keep the movie pure at its core, and like the recent Halloween films and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they at least kept it to they kept it close to the source material of the movies before. So I'll take that. I'll take that all day.
I'll allow it.
You're talking like I'm some kind of authority on this. I'm really not.
Well, and like even when it like okay, so even thinking like Evil Dead Rise.
Yes.
I always
Yep.
want to say rises, but it's not rises. There's no S on the
Right.
end. Anyway, like I am like that I think as of right this second is like my second most anticipated film for 2023. Like I am so pumped about that movie. Like I think first of all, I really loved the remake, not remake, that came out 20 whatever it was, like a few years ago.
Yeah, I liked
20
it too. Yeah.
Oh my god, so good. And it's like I know people argue with me every time I say this. It's like it's not a remake. I'm like, okay, fine, but it like feels like a remake. So I'm just gonna keep saying that it's a
Yeah,
remake.
it's like kind of a reboot, and because like they had this plan that they were going to like cross the timelines with the original Evil Dead movies, and
Yeah.
and
Well,
it didn't happen. But it's
yeah.
like, so then it's not so much a remake as it is kind of just like it is a reboot within the same universe,
Yeah, it's weird. Cause well,
you
and there's
know.
also like the car and there's like some other
Yeah,
like little things, but it felt like an origin to me. Like
it
when we
did.
get the opening, I was like, okay, so this is like, but like one of the things that I think is like a very like kind of backing up this argument that like new concepts work really well when they're within, like you said, like the source material. Like one of my favorite things about Evil Dead remake, not remake, is that you know, in our original story, the first person who experiences something is this totally like level-headed, just every, every person that you know is like this person. Like they're just very like average, like, and these are supposed to be people that this whole group knows really well, and they don't believe anything that they say. Everything
Mhm.
that they say doesn't make any sense. And then they changed that in the newer one and made Mia a recovering drug addict. And that was like, I say this like a 100,000 times, so I'm like blue in the face, but like that small story element made everything else in that film work for me, because I get so tired of these stories where these females experience stuff and everybody just thinks they're nuts. Like they can't
Right.
possibly be telling the truth. And I tell my friends like all the time, if I tell you that I see some shit, you better believe me or I'm finding new friends, because that's
Right.
ridiculous. Like,
But it's like not just saying that you're nuts, but like thinking that this person is nuts out of complete nowhere. Like they just
right.
started to be crazy. Like when? Like they were sane up until this point. So
Yeah.
why are we not believing this person when they're
Yeah.
saying something that seems really crazy? Really,
Mm-hmm.
well, if they were sane up until this point, what? Why? Just why?
Yeah.
You know,
That drives me nuts.
believe that person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. Having that small story element really did a lot for
Yeah.
giving reason to people's reactions towards her. You know,
Yeah.
and
It was
yeah,
perfect. Like, absolutely perfect. And I think that film is what makes me excited about the new one, because I thought that one was so good. And we got away from this like silliness of the original
oh my god, it
three.
was so scary, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, good. We're going back to like scare stuff, because like I don't
Oh
want silly, gory movies. I want like intense, terrifying, gory movies. Like, so I'm really
yeah,
excited about the newer one that comes out like in 2023. But
yeah, I'm
anyway,
really excited about it too.
yeah, I think it's gonna be really good. I'm not excited about the new Exorcist. I'm gonna watch it, but I'm not excited
Yeah,
about it. Not yet. So you have until then to watch it. To
okay,
rewatch
okay.
The Exorcist.
Give me a deadline. It's probably good. I should hold myself accountable to that.
Well, they keep pushing it out, so you may get lucky and have like 3
Well,
years before you have to
I got
watch
plenty of time then. Great. Everybody will forget that they told me to watch it. So then by then I'll get
Perfect.
away with it.
Yeah. Okay, so your next one is also another one that has not been on here before. But I think
Excellent.
this is because a lot of people would put this in the horror category, and then some people maybe wouldn't, but I definitely think this is a horror movie. And that's Ex how do you say it?
Machina.
Machina. I always say it incorrectly. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so
Yep.
that's your number 4.
That
I'm
is my
really
number
yeah,
4.
this one I haven't heard anybody talk about this one, so I'm excited.
It's like this is for a lot of people purely a sci-fi flick,
Sure.
which I understand. It is a sci-fi flick.
Yes.
However, Alex Garland, the director of this movie, and writer as well,
Yes.
is so good at giving you a sci-fi flick that just under the surface, not far beneath it, like just under the surface,
Yeah.
a fantastic horror flick as well.
Yeah.
Um, because with this movie in particular, like this really inspired me in terms of uh, atmosphere.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I and because when I watched this movie, uh, I just think I was still working on some of the short stories that are in my next book,
Hmm.
um, and there is a similarity between a lot of the stories that has somewhat become that I've realized that has
Hmm.
somewhat become somewhat of a style for me, and that
Okay.
is claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Not in the sense of putting someone in a box, although Ex Machina does do this. Uh,
Yes.
it puts the characters in several boxes, um,
Yes.
but focuses on the characters on such an individual level
Hmm.
that the scope never leaves that house, never leaves the
Yeah.
room that that character is in, never even leaves the headspace of that character in some scenes, and
Okay.
that can make somebody feel very nervous being that closed in mentally, and
Yeah. Yeah. I can
that's
see
one of
that.
the things that Ex Machina plays a lot. You know, I fucking love it. Uh, uh, I really do because I when I went back and reviewed some of the stories that I was writing,
Hmm.
um, I did notice that they typically focus on one character the whole time, or like one or two characters. Not There isn't a
Yeah.
huge cast of characters. There isn't this giant scope of
Right.
setting. It doesn't take place in three or four settings. It takes place in one setting, maybe
Yeah.
smaller settings within those walls,
Hmm.
but it's going to take place in like just one specific place.
Right.
And I think that as I watched Ex Machina, I'm like, holy shit, this is really, this spoke to me, as a
Yeah.
writer, and
Hmm.
because it did that, and it taps into people's fear of other people, uh,
Yes.
when it comes to being able to trust one another.
Yeah.
And these are very different fears. There's no monster in this movie.
Right.
You know, it's not like his next movie in Annihilation where there was one.
Yeah.
This is strictly people versus people,
That's true.
and yes, people versus a machine as well.
Yeah.
But that person or that machine was made by a person, but was
Right.
also hiding behind the mask of being a person.
Right.
So there was a huge trust element that
Yeah.
this movie plays on, and that is very scary for a lot of people, especially when they're meeting one another, for the first time.
Yeah.
You don't know how much you can trust a person, and not being able to trust anybody, as the main character in the story
Yeah.
finds out he can't trust the person who put him there in
Yeah.
that house.
Yeah.
He can't trust the AI, excuse me,
Yeah.
that he's testing,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and that isolates him. And that's a scary thought too, that
It is.
isolation, being put in there against your will.
Hmm.
It was his will to go into the house in the first place and
Right.
be locked in the house in the first place, but it
Yeah.
wasn't his will to become mentally isolated from the other two people in the house. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and to be to ah it's brilliant. This movie is so brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think Garland is such a great storyteller.
Yeah.
Everything he's put
I
out
agree.
is, I think, it's just it speaks volumes in every message that he puts that he has sent, and they're
Yeah.
big messages too. You know, they're subtly uh, um, delivered. They're delivered with subtlety, but they are big messages. You know,
Yeah.
have you watched Devs, the show Devs on Hulu?
I
Uh,
haven't.
yeah,
No.
that's his. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and that was straight up sci-fi. It's sci-fi espionage. It's not even horror. You know,
Huh.
it's dark like Ex
Uh-huh.
Machina is, so you'll kind of see like you'll see the similarities in styles. You
Yeah.
know, and the presentation, and it has that sort of
Okay.
dark quietness to it that Ex Machina has.
Okay.
Um, but the message in that was powerful. It was very powerful.
Is it
Um,
finished or is it
yeah, it's been. It only lasted a couple of seasons.
okay? I was just
Yeah,
curious. Okay.
um, yeah, it's a short series to watch. I wish there was more,
Oh,
but it was a short series to watch. But at the same time, I think it was just the length of it was just perfect. Uh,
yeah.
but watch that if you ever get a chance, because that's a brilliant one.
Okay.
But yeah, Ex Machina I think it hits a lot of points that terrify people, and it's a
Yeah.
different approach to the horror genre, and as it taps into things that we don't typically think we're going to see from horror movies. We're expecting monsters, we're expecting gore, we're expecting to be made uncomfortable through violent imagery, through
Yeah.
being disgusted,
Yeah.
and just straight up macabre imagery, but this doesn't
Yeah.
give you that necessarily. you
Right.
know is Garland
That's a good
says,
point.
no, I'm gonna get you, but I'm going deep into your brain to get you, and
Yeah.
you're not gonna expect that that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like I hadn't really thought about making someone feel isolation or claustrophobia in the way that you mentioned because like what it kind of made me think of, this is like a small side thing, but it's sort of related, is like, so I'm a huge Silent Hill fan. I love the Silent Hill games. I was a big fan of the first movie. And I'm really excited to see what else they're going to do now that they've announced they're finally doing something else. But one of my favorites of the franchise and the games is The Room. It's number 4. And so, and I think it's number 4. Yeah, that's right. And so the room, you literally like you're in this apartment and then you eventually like you get out and you go into these other locations of it. But essentially there's always this feeling like you've never left that room. Like you're always brought back to the room. You're always brought back to this realization that like you can't escape, you can't get out. Like and it's because it's focused so much on the way it creates like the things that we see when we're going through the story, right? So like we spend a lot of time in the room, we get out, we go to these different parts of the game, but we've never left. Like there's nowhere else to go. We can't just go outside and move on with our lives and never go back to that place. Like, and I've never really thought about why I thought that that game was so effective, but I think that does have a lot to do with it because you really do feel like you're trapped constantly the entire time you're playing because it is focused on this one thing in this essentially one location. And I've never thought about like how that affects you as you're either playing a game or watching something or even reading something. I've never thought about that. That's a really interesting point because you do feel isolated and you do feel like you're stuck even as you're moving through these places that are essentially not in the same space. But that's interesting. I'd never thought about it like that.
Yeah, it definitely got me. I mean, I'm not claustrophobic, I don't think, but
Oh, I
I mean, but
definitely
I'm
am.
starting to question. I started questioning that,
Like, I don't think so.
So, uh, uh, and I mean, that movie makes you question those types of things. There's a
Yeah.
really great scene in it. It's a pivotal scene in the movie uh, where the main character, he's for anybody who hasn't watched this movie, um, it is about a guy who is hired by the CEO of his company to perform a Turing test on an AI that the boss has designed. And the
Mm-hmm.
Turing test is to see if the AI can pass as human, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
know, so there's a scene in it where the guy who's conducting the tests uh, has to test whether or not he himself is human.
Yeah.
And I think you know the scene I'm talking about.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
That is a whole other level of discomfort and fear and a statement on gaslighting that is
Yeah.
that just like makes you go holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's not one point in the movie before this where I thought that he would start saying, well, wait, hold on a second, is this test really on me? You know,
Right.
did he, you know,
Yeah.
did he create me? And you
Yes.
know, I have to test that somehow, and he
Yeah.
does it, and you know, gets the answer that he's looking for. But holy shit, like that's
Yeah.
um, you know, to question that is beyond just mind fucking.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean,
Yeah. No,
it's
I
great.
agree.
It's great, and it's such a great scene. You know, so anybody who hasn't watched Ex Machina, please do.
Yeah.
You know, and then try to fight me if you say it's not a horror movie.
Well, I think it's always interesting when there seems to be this argument, and it tends to typically be with things that are sci-fi, whether or not it's like a horror movie. Like as
Mhm.
far as like, so my best friend, who's not like a super big horror person, but she and I actually got into like a discussion one time about like the fact that like Alien is like a sci-fi movie, and I'm like, no, it's definitely like a horror movie though. Like it can be horror sci-fi. I'm fine. We can put it in two buckets, but it's absolutely a horror movie. And
Yeah.
I remember she was like, well, but it's an alien. Aliens are sci-fi. I'm like, no, aliens are creatures. They're creatures. They're monsters. Like, at least in this version, right? And so,
Mhm.
like, that puts them in the horror bucket. Like, so it's just funny, these conversations we always have about, like, what is or isn't horror. But a lot of the times, I know a ton of movies that are essentially sci-fi films, but they're definitely also horror. Like, and I would totally agree that this falls in both buckets. I would consider it a horror sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Have you ever seen what is it called? Pandorum?
I haven't.
It's got Ben Foster. Oh god, who's the guy that plays? I have to look it up. It's gonna drive me crazy really quick. IMDb. It's got Ben Foster in it for sure. And it reminds me a lot of oh my god, what's the other movie that it reminds me of? Pandorum. Dennis Quaid is the other
Oh,
person
okay.
that's in it. What's the oh my Event Horizon? It reminds me so much of that,
Oh my
except
god.
this has like actual what?
If this was a top 10 list, Event Horizon would have been on it.
Yeah, so I have had that one on the show before because that one is yeah. Um
What
that's a
Hellraiser should have been when
fantastic,
they went to space.
huh?
What Hellraiser should have been when they went to space.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So Pandorum, I think, definitely got a lot of influence from Event Horizon, but it has creatures in it. But it's also, so I think if I remember, it's been a minute since I've seen it. I watched this so long ago. This was when I worked in the restaurant industry, and the cooks would make me DVDs for like $3. Like, so I have like a little burn CD that just has handwritten Pandorum on it. It's downstairs. Anyway, so I haven't seen it in a while, but if I remember correctly, Pandorum is supposed to be this like psychosis that happens when you're in space and you start to question reality. Or at least that's how the story builds. But it's really good. Like I really, really liked it a lot. But it reminds me kind of what we're talking about with these themes of like the focal point being like this one person, and then like I don't know, like this, and in Pandorum, they're like trapped in, they're in a space station, but they come out of like stasis, and they can't figure out what's happened to their ship. all they know is that, like, as they try to get out of this one room, every time they get out, something bad happens. It's really, really good, but it's very much a science. It's definitely like a science fiction movie, but it's absolutely also horror. So it like fits very well on either side of it. But whenever I talk about movies like that, I always think of that movie because so many people like haven't heard of it or seen it, and it's really, really good.
Well, I definitely have to watch it now.
Yeah, I think you'll like it if you like Event Horizon, especially. But I mean,
Okay.
even Ex Machina, like I think you'd like it. I think it's good. It just kind of there's some sci-fi stuff that it makes me think of that. For it makes me think of both movies, Event Horizon and this one. But anyway, just worth mentioning because it's really good.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, that takes us to your last one,
Yes,
which also has never been on a list.
probably for the same reason that we're having, probably because of the conversation that we're having right now.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a great segue into your last
a
movie.
lot of people don't think this is a horror movie, but also fight me.
Yeah.
This is absolutely a horror movie for many reasons. Just because I think it actually falls into at the very least, two subgenres of horror.
Yes, I agree.
And the movie is Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
I know it's like talking about it. I'm sure people are like, "What the fuck?"
Tell us already.
So Jurassic Park.
For the end of the episode, I love it.
Yeah, right. Hey, horrors are a thing. Suspense is part of the whole thing, right? I think that Jurassic Park, the two subgenres that it falls into are mad scientists, which also Ex Machina, mad scientists.
Yep.
And B, creature feature.
Creature feature. Yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, because these dinosaurs are not dinosaurs. They're monsters. They're genetically modified creatures.
1000%. Yes.
Made by this mad scientist, you know, who wanted some kind of, you know, who wanted this power, this like feeling of being godly in creating these creatures. Almost kind of sounds like Frankenstein, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Which is a horror movie. It's practically the same thing, but with a different species and a different outcome. You know,
not grave digging this time. Well, different type of grave digging, I guess.
Kind of.
Semantics.
Yeah. But I think that it absolutely falls into the horror genre because of those two subgenres that they absolutely are. And there are terrifying aspects to this movie. I mean, like, every time that our protagonists are in danger, it's not like they're having a shootout with a dinosaur. Like, these people are fearing for their lives.
Yes.
You know, they're going to be eaten by this monster who has one thing in mind: it wants to eat you. You know, which is the basis of like every creature feature out there. You know, it follows of and come on, Steven Spielberg knows how to do a horror movie, right?
Yes.
He gave us Jaws. You know, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And this is his work where he gives us his horror chops that we've seen before from movies like Jaws, and puts in other elements from his more wholesome movies like E.T. Like, he puts the kids in there, and you know, there's that relationship that he's very famous for. And this is one of those total package movies of his that I think is so influential, not just to me but to so many other people. I watched it when it came out. I think it was one of the first movies I saw in theaters, actually. But and it shook me, you know, in a great way. I was obsessed with dinosaurs after that movie. I was obsessed with storytelling,
Yeah.
after watching that movie. I thought that was so awesome, and it kind of unlocked something in my brain when it came to
Yeah.
my creativity, and it was like that in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Both of those.
I can see that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, both of those. I mean, I was such a huge nerd for, still am,
Yeah.
but those two like really, really were heavy influences in me as a creative person. But on the
Yeah.
horror aspect, I mean, Jurassic Park was like how do you do this? How do you create how do you create this world? How do you create this
Yeah.
this a story like this? It's fantastic,
It
you
is.
know, and it does have that kind of whimsical thing about it, you know.
Yeah.
Which again, Steven Spielberg is just really good at that, but he
That's
creates
true.
whimsy
Yeah.
so well. But this had it in a way that ET didn't have it. ET's cute. Yeah, there's almost a whimsy to the point of kind of magical when it comes to that kind of thing. And then he's like, well,
Yeah.
there's some dinosaurs coming to eat you, and it's like, well, there's whimsy in that, but that is not the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean that movie really got me. I still watch it over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great that
Yeah,
has high rewatch value.
absolutely.
So I think it's interesting because I like you mentioned Jaws. So that's another one that people argue isn't a horror movie. I see that I see these people post about this every summer when it's shark movie season where they're like, "Oh, Jaws isn't horror." And I'm like, "Stop
How?
it." It's a creature feature. And that's what I always say. Like, I think at the bare minimum, these are creature feature films, I think.
Yes.
But I actually would even go as far as to call Jaws psychological horror because there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the character development that has nothing to do with the shark that is really critical to the storyline and the way we feel when the shark comes. Like there's all
Yes.
of these things that impact those feelings. And it was kind of got me thinking, I was thinking about the Jaws thing in my head. And it also is interesting because a lot of times, creature features go a lot of different directions. Sometimes they're very dark. Sometimes they're very the total opposite. They're silly, right? But I think what Jurassic Park does really well is it balances like exactly like you said. There are these legitimately scary, terrifying moments where like we're about to be torn to shreds by these dinosaurs, and then there's these moments where we get them where this love for dinosaurs is what makes these different moments very like beautiful, like when we see the peaceful dinosaurs or we see or they're herbivores eventually, but I mean essentially, but when we see that it's this weird balance of like, you start thinking like these things are not supposed to be here. So like when you think about it and the scale of like if dinosaurs really were brought back, they're not supposed to be here. So like all of this scary thing is like, what if that really happened and they're designed the way that they are and they just have these instincts and that's it. And they're either going to eat, a plant or you like, and it just is such a perfect balance because we've also got these budding relationships and these characters that we're getting involved in their development. And there's all these things that go into this that make all of those scary chase scenes and everything like more effective because we actually care about what happens to these characters, which is
Mm-hmm.
not always done in other creature feature type films because sometimes you don't get time to get connected at all. Sometimes you're just watching it to watch something, eat something else, like, but there's such a great balance of the scary with the humanity, and I really really like that about this movie too.
That's what makes them. That's what I think makes a movie impactful.
Yeah.
Especially horror movies. That if you don't
Yeah.
care about the character,
Yeah.
that no matter what happens to them, you're not going to feel anything. You're not going to feel. And one of the things that you want a, an audience to feel is fear for that character,
Yes.
and also empathetic fear. So you want
Yes.
to be scared. You want to be scared for the possibility that you're going to lose that character, but you also want to be in that character's shoes, feeling the same
Yeah.
fear that they're feeling. But you're not
So
going to
true.
feel that if you're not connected to that character.
Yeah, because you won't care.
You know,
It's like,
yeah,
I'll see you later. That's true. I also
and
cared about the dinosaurs a lot. That was
You
another
do.
feeling I had.
They didn't ask to be. They didn't ask to be there.
Yeah, and then and then they get treated off and on like these monsters, and I'm like, that's not their fault. Like they're
Yeah,
just
but not
doing
only
what
that, they were
animals
brought
do.
back to be in a zoo. You know,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like, come on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's so true.
they,
Yeah.
it was bad for them too. And
Yeah.
one thing that I really love about what you were just saying is
Mhm.
um, about how the dinosaurs will react and all.
Yeah.
And you generally said exactly what was in the dinner scene in that movie,
Oh, yeah. I
where
guess that's true.
where like no, but this is what I love. This is what I love about you saying that,
Yeah.
because it reminded me of that, because they went down the line of Grant, Ellie, and Malcolm, and
Yep.
all of them agreeing that this is a bad idea and here's why, right?
Mhm.
That scene, if you're paying attention, Spielberg said this is why this is a horror movie. That scene. This is why it's a horror flick.
Yeah.
Okay, now chaos can ensue. You know, just
Yeah.
so you guys know, this is why this is scary, and this is why it should scare you.
That's a really good
And
point. Yeah.
it's almost not spoon fed to you per se, but
No.
it's right
Yeah.
there in front of you. The explanation for why this is a horror movie is in one scene right there in front of you.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that there's my argument if anyone wants to fight me. But
About why Jurassic Park is a horror
yeah,
movie.
I'm not looking for a fight. I know I'm saying fight me a lot. I'm not actually looking for the fight. You know.
I know I keep saying that, but
Yeah. I'm not trying to pick fights with people. I'm just saying, if you have an argument, this is it. uh,
yeah, I always say that like one thing I will never do is I will never gatekeep horror. Like I feel like that's a form of gatekeeping. When you tell someone that
mhm.
a horror movie they love or a horror movie that they like isn't horror, that's gatekeeping, and I'm like, I have no time for that at all. Like
Yeah,
zero time for gatekeeping when it comes to horror. I think to me horror is anything that unsettles, it gets under your skin. It can be something that doesn't have any magical anythings, no creatures, no supernatural, it doesn't matter. One of someone else that was on he was Rhonda Garcia's list, she did Eve's Bayou, which plenty of people wouldn't even consider that a horror movie, but it is in a lot of ways, like especially when you talk about how it affects people, like that's what makes it a horror movie. You can categorize it however you want, but at the end of the day, what as far as what label it falls under, it's how it makes people feel. And if it feels like a horror movie, then it is.
and it's up to the viewer, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
what scares you isn't what scares me.
So true. Yeah.
You know, and people can see people take the movie Arachnophobia for example,
Yeah,
right? Um, a lot of people would see that as a comedy, as a
I
good
do.
comedy, because I mean it has comedic. It's presented very much like one, but
Yes.
I, as an arachnophobe, dis you know kind of disagree. Well, I don't say I disagree because it's definitely a comedy, but that's definitely a horror movie for me. You know,
Yeah.
uh, so it really could be just up to. It's not up to the studio to
Right.
tell me that what I
Yes.
just saw, was or wasn't a horror
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
And if it scares me, then guess what?
It's a horror movie.
It's a horror movie.
Well,
Uh,
and I think the horror genre specifically is also really great about being multiple things, because it
yeah.
can be a horror movie and still be funny. It can be a horror movie and still be, have a love story. It can be a horror movie, and it can be all of these things, whereas you're very limited. Like if you're a rom-com, you're rom-com. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you can't really be, but you can have horror dramas. You can have, like, there's so many things that it can be. And its versatility is one of the things that I think makes it so great, because to your point, what is effective or scary or unsettling to this person is not going to be for the next. And it's what makes these conversations so interesting, because like I hadn't really, even though I definitely agree that Jurassic Park is a horror movie, I had never really thought about it outside of that. Like I'd never really thought given it a lot of thought as to what made it a horror movie. Why would it be categorized that way? So, but that's just because everybody looks at everything differently. And that's kind of like, the fun of it. So
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes horror such a beautiful genre, and why I never understood why it gets overlooked by so many people. You know, it's not seen to the same regards as
I
drama
know.
and comedies, and
I
and,
know.
and even action flicks for that matter.
No,
And I'm
yeah.
not shitting on action flicks. It, that really sounded like I was taking a huge dump on action flicks. I love action flicks. uh, but horror is never seen, not never, but by so many people isn't seen, isn't seen it with the same perspective as those other movies in terms of being art, and being worthy of being in the same class as these other genres.
So
Um,
true.
it does so much more than some of these other genres do. It doesn't
Agreed.
allow itself to be pigeonholed. It can do so much while scaring you, and I think in so many aspects,
Yeah.
horror can be harder to create than a lot of other genres because of that balance that you have to put into those stories. You
I
know,
completely
it's
agree. Yeah.
but I don't know. I That's why I love it so much. There's a beauty behind that I can really get behind. I can really get behind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think yeah, horror pushes things and it makes me think in ways that a lot of the other genres just can't do. And I think that that's definitely a lot of the magic of it as a genre as a whole, regardless of the what is and what isn't.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I think also it does this thing that I really admire, where um, it doesn't it pulls no punches. In
No.
it's that genre that can present itself in the most raw way possible. If it needs to send a message, which a lot of the times it sends messages in the same or similar vein as sci-fi.
Yeah.
There's a lot of undertones.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but um, it can get away with something that sci-fi doesn't, which is if the undertones aren't working, we're going to quite literally beat you over the head with it.
Yeah.
We can do that. We're
Yeah.
horror. We can get away with a lot more shit.
A lot more.
you
That's
know,
true. That's true.
and I think that is such a cool thing too, where it can be just complete trash if it wants to be. Um, it can be the
Yeah.
highest form of art if it wants to be.
Yeah.
It can go on both sides of the spectrum and everywhere in
Yeah.
between, and
Yeah.
still be very enjoyable as long as you understand what you're watching.
That's true. Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, I think, yeah, like I said, its versatility is definitely what makes it so appealing, and that's on the creating side of it and the consuming side of it, whatever that would be, like the viewers, the readers, the
Yeah.
whatever. Um, yeah, cool. Well, that's Ivan's top 5 influential horror.
Yeah.
Thanks again for making time for this. This was fun. I'm glad we were able to make it work.
Yeah, me too. I mean, this was great, and
Yeah.
I don't really get to talk about these movies the way I just did, so it was pretty cool.
Good. Yeah, I my first, I guess we'll call it like branching out experience for my channel where I actually started doing videos with other people was this series. I started filming it for the very first time last November and I released my first set of like 10 episodes in January and February of this year. And it was like there really isn't, not to brag, but there really isn't any other conversations like this. There's top list of things that you like and you enjoy or top 5 worst whatevers, right? But as far as like things that influence people, especially because, I have it from like horror authors to people who are in film to people who are just other content creators, booktubers, and then people who are just fans of the genre who have opinions on the movies that make their list. And it's been fantastic to hear everybody's thoughts on how these movies impacted them, and what especially when people tie it into things that they've done, like you talking about tying things into your writing. And it's just such interesting conversation. So this is like probably the series I'm like most proud of, because I just feel like it gives people insight into horror fans' brains and what makes them just go hard eyes for horror, so to speak.
Well, I think it's a great contribution, and I'm so happy and excited to be part of it. So
cool. Yeah.
Very happy. Yeah. I'm very happy
No,
doing
yeah.
this.
This is a great conversation. I'm really excited. Yeah. So that is this episode of Influential Horror. This is a playlist. If this is your first time watching Influential Horror, highly recommend going back and watching the others, because there are some crazy movies on these different lists. So definitely check out the playlist. Once again, all of Ivan's information will be in the description for this episode for you to go follow him and check out his content, as well as his book, and then, his new book when it comes out. Do you have a release date? Not yet? Okay.
Not yet. I'm still working on finishing the last story of the
Oh, okay.
So we're almost there. I'm almost there.
Cool. Yeah.
So but if you guys follow me on my social medias, you'll get all the updates.
That's what I was just going to say. I was like, so make sure you're following us, so you're in the know. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Have a good rest of your week and a good weekend, and I'll see you next time.